Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 7, Chapter 6, Prahlad instructs his demoniac schoolmates. Text number 6. Pumso Varsha Satam Yayus Tarartam Ajitatmanaha Nishpalam Yad Aso Ratriyam Shetendam Pratitas Tamaha Pumso Varsha Shatam Yayus Tadartam Ajitatmanaha Nishpralam Yad Aso Ratriyam Shetendam Pratitas Tamaha. Dami. Pumso Varsha Shatam Yayus Tad Artam Pratitatmaha Nishpalam Yadaso Ratriyam Shetendam Pratitas Samaha. Pumsa of every human being. Varsha Shatam 100 years. He indeed. Ayu duration of life. Tat of that. Ardam half. Cha and Ajit Atmanaha of a person who is a servant of his senses. Nishpalam without profit, without meaning. Yet because aso that person ratriyam at night shete sleeps, andam ignorance, forgetting his body and soul, prapitaha being completely possessed of, tamaha darkness. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Every human being has a maximum duration of life of 100 years. But for one who cannot control his senses, half those years are completely lost, because at night he sleeps 12 hours, being covered by ignorance. Therefore, such a person has a lifetime of only 50 years. Purport: Lord Brahma, a human being, and an ant live for 100 years. but their lifetimes of 100 years are different from one another. The world is a relative world, and its relative moments of time are different. Thus, 100 years of Brahma are not the same as 100 years of a human being. From Bhagavad Gita, we understand that Brahma's duration of 12 hours equals 3,400,000 times 1,000 years. Sahasra yuga paryantam ahoryad brahmano vidu. Thus, the Varsha Shatam, or 100 years, are relatively different according to time, person, and circumstances. As far as human beings are concerned, the calculation given here is right for the general public. Although one has a maximum of 100 years of life, by sleeping, one loses 50 years. Eating, sleeping, sex, life, and fear are the four bodily necessities. But to utilize the full duration of life, a person desiring to advance in spiritual consciousness must reduce these activities. That will give him an opportunity to fully use his lifetime. Pumso varsha shatam yayus tadartam cha jitatmanaha nishpalam tadaso ratriyam shaitendam pratitasamaha. Every human being has a maximum duration of life of 100 years, but for one who cannot control his senses, half those years are completely lost, because at night he sleeps 12 hours, being covered by ignorance. Therefore, such a person has a lifetime of only 50 years. Namo Vishnu Vidaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Tinamane Namaste Saraswatam Deve Gauravani Pacharane Nirvishesha Srinivadi Paskyatyade Sitarne. Sometimes we may think that Brahma is more fortunate than we are because he lives for 311 trillion, 40 billion years. If he could just give us, a couple of billion years, we'd be very happy. We don't really aspire. 311, well, if he gave us 1 trillion years, that would also be nice. He would have 310 trillion years left. So sometimes we think like that. It would be nice if we could live longer. But actually we live forever. The question is what we do with our lifetime. As a matter of fact, the demigods, it is said that they aspire to come and take birth in the Sankirtan movement. They don't aspire to come and take birth in Kali Yuga. But they aspire to take birth in Kali Yuga during the Sankirtan movement, because in this one lifetime one can become perfect and go back to the spiritual world in such a quick period of time. So although our life is so short that the demigods are amazed that people are working in order to make so-called progress in this inconceivably short duration of life, but still there's one advantage. There's one great thing, that in this age, one can chant the holy names and go back to the spiritual world. Kalo doshe ide rajan nashta moha. Kalo deshe nide rajan nashta moha nasti ekam maha gunan. Kirtanayak sadahari. Let's start this over. Kalodo Shaunade Rajan Nashta Eka Maharaja Gunan. What's the next one? What is it? Kirtanaya Eva Krishna Sya Mukta Sangha Brajam Brajat. Kalo Dosha Nidera. In this age of Kali is an ocean of faults. Nide means an ocean. And Nashta Eka Mahagunan. Still, there's one great thing. Kirtaniya Kirtanai eva krishnasya mukta sangha param vraja. That simply by chanting the holy name, one can go back to the spiritual world. Now, if we don't learn how to chant the holy name, Kali Yuga is going to be very inconvenient to live in. So it's not enough just to superficially chant the holy name. We have to chant the holy name as if we're not going to be here for a long time. So part of our philosophy is to, as they say, get real, find out what's actually going on. One time Prabhupada made the statement that unfortunately most of his followers and disciples, they're simply going to be happy to go to the heavenly planets. The thought is, yes, I may not be perfect. The spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak. But in any case, I get the consolation prize. I go to the heavenly planets. Unfortunately, it's probably not a very good plan, because the duration of the life in the heavenly planets is sometimes not as long as we'd like it to be. And if we come back after the 10,000 years, when the golden age has ended, then we're really in difficulty. Not only we're not going to necessarily get inspired to continue chanting, but then we're going to have to spend a lot of time running away from these pygmies trying to eat us. Because Kali Yuga lasts for 432,000 years, of which 427,000 have gone by, and the next 10,000 would leave 417,000 years, and we come back in an inopportune time, and we have 417,000 years left to Kali Yuga. No prasadam. No, difficult to find a kirtan party because most of them got eaten. Then it would not be very auspicious. So this idea that somehow or another we made it into the Hare Krishna movement, everything's all right, we're going there, the worst thing that's going to happen to me after I leave this body is I come back in the heavenly planets and maybe I'll meet my soulmate there. Everything will be nicer there. But time there goes very, very quickly. Because when you're having a good time, everything goes very quick. It's only when you're suffering that time slows down. So for an ant who's suffering, 100 years seems like 100 years because of suffering. For us, our 100 years seems like 100 years because we're suffering. And for Brahma, his 100 years goes by quickly because he's relatively enjoying. But he also has some suffering, and therefore, generally speaking, Brahma is using his time, at least some of the time, for meditation to become Krishna conscious. There's a story of Kukumi. Actually, it's not Kukumi, but he had a daughter. It wasn't Kukumi, it was his son. He had a daughter named Revati. And Revati, Kukumi, he wanted to find out who would be a suitable husband for his daughter, because Revati was quite qualified. So he decided to go to Brahmaloka to find out. And he went to Brahmaloka, and there was Gandharvas were having a concert, Kirtan weekend. It was a Kirtan Mela, and Brahma said, yes, I can take care of you. Just wait a couple of minutes. Kirtan's almost over. So he waited a couple of minutes, and Brahma said, yes, what's your question? So I have my daughter here, and she's very qualified, and I'd like to find a suitable husband. And Brahma said, well, unfortunately, you've been here only for a few minutes. But in terms of your time, it's been kalpas. So many kalpas have gone by that your whole kingdom has disappeared. And anyone who's ever heard of your kingdom, they also disappeared. So right now you're broke. You lost everything. Fortunately, though, like at this very moment, if you go immediately to the earth, Lord Balaram is there, and it just so happens your daughter is the eternal consort of Lord Balaram. So you can get a good deal if you leave immediately. So he didn't ask questions, he just left. And Revati caught up with Lord Balaram. So time is inconceivable, but that's one factor that we can't overcome. We may not like time. It happens to be Krishna, so it's not good not to like him. But Krishna says, it's Ugrarupo. Actually, the form he says is Ugrarupo. And time, kalosmi lokashe krit pravrido, lakam samaharta miha pravitak, vitepi twamna vivishanti sarve, ivastita pratnyukeshi yoda. Time I am the destroyer of all the worlds. So it's not just in Ljubljana time is going on. If you want some consolation that we're suffering here because of time, well, even on Brahmaloka they're suffering, although they think they're enjoying. But they have enough intelligence to understand that theoretically they're suffering. And here we're suffering, we can't imagine how much we're suffering. At every moment we're afflicted by the threefold miseries. Apparently here in Ljubljana, maybe 2 days a year, or maybe a couple of weeks, there's good weather. The rest of the time it rains or it's cold or whatever. So you can't say people are coming to Ljubljana or Slovenia because they like the weather here. I think very few people are making a pilgrimage to Slovenia for the weather. As far as the fact whether people have any misery here, bodily misery, apparently there's hospitals here, and you can see the ambulances going by once in a while. So obviously people are not free from disease here. And even if they're free from disease, there's so much propaganda about this virus that everyone at least is in anxiety. They'll get sick from the anxiety, being afraid of the disease. They may not be sick now, but out of fear, the anxiety that the fear will produce will create a lot of disease. And then they can accredit that to the coronavirus, which is, and as far as relationships with others, we haven't seen that everyone here is dancing in the street, joining hands, happily dancing with each other in the street. One time I was on a morning walk with Srila Prabhupada. It was actually the morning in Dallas, and Prabhupada was walking by these houses and say, you see these houses? They're full of householders and they're all envious of each other. Everyone is thinking they're going on the roof and measuring their house to see if their house is as big as everyone else's house. They can't sleep at night thinking that their neighbor, who they despise, has a bigger house than them. So the material world is an attempt to satisfy our envious consciousness. Because we're envious of Krishna, we've come here to satisfy our envious nature and try and feel better than someone else. That's why they have newspapers. They don't have newspapers that tell you about all the good news. People don't read the newspaper to find out all the good things that are happening around the world. No, they're just full of all kinds of misery. Because when people hear about the misery, they become enlivened. Thinking that I may be miserable, but look at here. I'm not as miserable as they are, therefore I must be happy. Although people are advertising that they're making progress, but they're not making progress in the real sense of the term. They're imagining that they're making progress in time to getting better at becoming something that they can never become. So to try to get better at something you can never become is obviously a waste of time. And the only thing that stands between their complete illusion and reality is time. Because time doesn't allow people to stay in illusion. So people may not like time. They may like illusion. But Krishna is very kind, because illusion is not very good for the soul. It's like a child. He wants to put his hand in the fan. His father says, don't do it, don't do it. But the child insists. So the father realizes, if I turn my back, this rascal kid's going to put his hand into the fan. So he slows the fan down, and then the child he says, go ahead, go for it. And he puts his finger in the fan, and gets hit. He doesn't get cut off, he just feels the pain. So then the father puts the fan on again and says, go for it. And no, get me away from that fan. So everyone's come here very enthusiastically to enjoy the material nature, and especially in Kali Yuga, they're making things that are completely insignificant as attractive as possible, so you can buy it. Toothpaste, which is completely insignificant, they make it so attractive, people actually feel this desire to buy the toothpaste. It arises some desire. We're working for 20 years here, or 50 years, trying to get a little desire to serve Krishna. And they have an advertisement that actually invokes desire within the heart to get this toothpaste. So how unfortunate we are. We can't figure out the advertisement to develop a little desire to get Krishna. And they have people running to the store to get some toothpaste or underarm deodorant. That the only reason why people don't love me is because my arms don't smell like roses. So if I could just solve that one problem, they believe, after all this propaganda, then their life will actually become perfect or better. And they're surprised. And therefore they're always coming out with a new brand of deodorant. This is the super powered underarm deodorant. This one everyone falls for. So material world means constant illusion, and the only thing that separates us from going to hell is reality coming in the form of time. Because that's probably one of the only forms of reality that most people are actually aware of. Now we can go on preaching that you're not this body, and people just ignore us. Matter of fact, we ignore it too. We live life as if we're going to be here forever too. But time and tide wait for no man. And therefore time will gradually take mrityu sarvaharashtraham. Time will take everything away. Our youth, our memory, and especially in Kali Yuga, tatas chanudinam sat dharma sattvam socham dayashama balena kaliya rajan nakshantya yo balam smriti. Day after day, as Kali Yuga goes on, everything good will go away, will gradually diminish. Because gradually dharma will disappear. It's disappearing. People think, what's the use of dharma? Because there's no God, there's no karma, there's no time. We can just do anything we want. So this is called the mode of ignorance. Prakasho, prapritis cha, pramado moha eva cha, tamasyetani jayate vride paratara shiva. When there's increase in the mode of ignorance, aprakasho, people become darkness reigns. Just like in Ljubljana today, the sun has disappeared and darkness has come out. Aprakasha, pravritischa, inactivity. Of course, this inactivity is probably good. Due to the COVID virus, people had to be inside. So they were doing less crazy activities. But it's not that they became purified by doing less activity. They're just trying to rev up. Wow, when I get the chance, wow, we're really going to get out there. It's pent up. Pravritischa, lack of real activity. They don't know what's to be done, what's not to be done. Whatever they do is like Prabhupada said, there's 4 kinds of persons. One is the active, the inactive intelligent, the active intelligent, the active foolish, and the inactive foolish. And the worst one is the active foolish. Because at least the inactive foolish, he may be foolish, but he can't do much harm because he doesn't do anything. But the active foolish are like the monkeys. They're just running around, just collecting karma, bad karma. If they slowed up and did nothing, that's very good for them. Because whatever hell Yamaraj has arranged for them, it won't be a permanent place for them. At the end of life, they go to Yamaraj, and Yamaraj said, well, my scribes are still working on it, trying to figure out your sinful reactions. We haven't figured out a place for you. Maybe you can just wait here for a second. I have a few million people, other people to judge. And by that time, because we just got a new computer, maybe we'll figure out where you're going to go. Well, let me tell you, you might as well settle down here for a while. This is going to be a home for a good period of time. So if people are inactive, it's better than if they're actively foolish. Pramado, but they're crazy. Mununam pramato kurute vikarma, because they don't know what actually is the results of their activity. They don't know how time is infallible and they can't escape it. They may try to cover it over with makeup, operations, taking this vitamin, that, but time will come and take everything away. And they have to get the results of whatever they've done in this material world. Pramado, moha, an illusion. Everyone's walking, I am this body, I am the Lord, I am the enjoyer. Anyone who says differently than that is a fool and rascal. Anyone who tries to correct the Supreme is certainly going to get into difficulty. So these are the things caused by the mode of ignorance. And the principal thing of mode of ignorance is that we are this body, and even worse than that, we're going to be here forever in this body. And even worse than that, it doesn't matter what I do. There's no reaction, there's no God, there's nothing in control. The only thing of life is satyam apratishtam te, jagata hora nishvaram, aparashparam sambhutyam kimanya kama haitukam. They say that this world is unreal, it has no foundation, no God in control, nothing's in control. I don't get any karma, I don't get a reaction, I can do whatever my senses dictate to me, and everything will be all right. No worries, it's cool. It's produced of sex desire, has no other cause than lust. That the whole purpose of living, as long as you live and try to gratify your senses, don't worry about the next life. Chavarka Muni said, beg, borrow, and steal, but get ghee. Eat samosas until they come out your ears. Don't worry, but what about your next lifetime? Well, not get and react. Don't worry, because when you're dead, you're dead. When the body falls, everything disappears. So obviously this is simply illusion, madness, because we're having so many bodies, but we're not disappearing. We may want to disappear sometimes. That's why we go to sleep. Only at night we disappear temporarily. Even then we don't disappear. We become unconscious. Therefore, the conclusion is that one should utilize one's time as much as possible in devotional service. Ayuvarati hai pumsam. Ayuvarati hai pumsam. Nashtan. With both the rising of the setting of the sun, everyone's duration of life is lost, except for one who utilizes one's time in glorifying the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Ayur harati vaipumsam udanashtam taya chayo. What's the next point? That both with the day and the night, everything, ayu harati vaipumsam. So ayu means the duration of life. For a man, ayu harati vaipumsam is being lost. Udanashtam taya chayo. Both with the rising and the setting of the sun. And then the next line is something about, except for the person who's glorifying, Uttama Shloka Vartaya, who's glorifying the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Because we're waking up by glorifying Krishna. No matter what time we're utilizing for that time, we're waking up into eternal reality. We're living eternally. We're all on the transcendental platform. That's where we exist eternally. We never really become part of the material world. Like when you mix water and oil together, they never mix. So we never become part of the material world. We're just watching a movie. Undoubtedly, it's a very good movie in the sense that they have this IMAX, I think it's called IMAX, is that right? These 3D movies. They don't have that in Slovenia, I guess. You go there, and everything appears to be three-dimensional. It's like a huge screen. You never heard that? Did you ever hear that? Yeah, 3D production. And then it's almost, I saw it one time, I was completely unimpressed because it was a free movie. You can imagine the quality of the movie. It wasn't even a movie, it was someone eating an apple. So, no, he half ate the apple, and then you see it drop into his stomach, and what happened? Very unimpressive. In any case, they're trying to make it as impressive as possible, these movies. I think they had that movie Avatar, because all the devotees went and saw it, because it had a spiritual name. It was purified by the name. But I heard it was a 3D movie, but I don't know what a 3D... Did anyone ever see a 3D movie? When I was younger, they had these 3D comic books. Did you ever see a 3D comic book? That shows you how good it was. That was like 50 years ago, or 60 years ago, they had these comic books. You put on these glasses, cheap glasses. You imagine a comic book cost 10 cents back there. Imagine what the glasses were worth. And it was like these colored glasses, and supposedly the comic book was made in such a way it was supposed to become 3D. It never worked at all. It's worth 10 cents. In any case, they're trying to make things as realistic as possible. I think they have these glasses now. You put them on and you can see some image 3D. Did you ever see those? We're all very innocent here. But in Dallas, the devotees had a kirtan filmed in that 3D, in that environment, and they had these glasses, you put it on, you could actually see the kirtan going on. as if you were actually there and the kirtan was going on. Of course, you could go into the temple and have a kirtan too. You don't have to buy the glasses. Anyhow, but they're trying to make it as realistic as possible. But Krishna has created a whole universe of illusion. Where we're actually imagining, this is better than 3D. This is multiple dimensions and experiences. All the senses are involved. They had this movie, I was told, that you go into it, it's like a 3D movie, whatever. It doesn't mean anything to us if you never saw it. But then they want to have all the senses involved. So if you're on a roller coaster, they have your seat moving back and forth. And I guess they probably emit smells into the auditorium, so you can smell whatever's going on, good or bad. In that way, trying to make it realistic. So, but Krishna has created the ultimate thing, the ultimate illusion, and we're believing that this is all real that's going on, that we're actually part of it. It's real. It's Krishna's creation. It's amazing how powerful Krishna is. He can create unlimited universes like this. But we're not part of it. We're not part of the universe. We're not doing anything. We're not entangled. We're all transcendental. But we're entangled because of our desire. And we can change our desire from trying to enjoy the material world, have a good life in this material existence, to having a life in the spiritual existence. Then our spiritual life will become successful. Although our material life may fall apart. It's going to fall apart anyhow. There was nothing to fall apart actually to begin with, except for our imagination. So I'll stop there. Thank you. Any questions? Yes.
Thank you, Maharaj. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
My question is, how will golden age look like in Kali Yuga?
A lot better than it looks now. What will it look like? Most of the people will be chanting Hare Krishna and eventually following Varnashram system. There'll be a few people who are really serious, and there'll be many pure devotees, and everyone will be interested in kirtan, because that's the only thing that will sustain everything. And there'll be a few people who are driven out of society, who will be determined to live like hippies and continue on enjoying like animals in Kali Yuga. The influence of Kali Yuga will always be there, even in the golden age, but it probably gives the example, just like when it's raining, it keeps on raining, just like today. But if you have an umbrella, you won't become affected by it. So there'll be a lot of spiritual umbrellas passed out, and people won't be affected so much by Kali Yuga. They take shelter of the holy name. So we're just entering into the beginning of the golden age. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is going to make things a lot worse, turn up the heat, the misery. So people see they have no choice but to take shelter. Of course, then we have to have some shelter to give them some opportunity to take shelter, some place to take shelter of the holy name. So the Satya golden age will begin when we start chanting Hare Krishna without offense. Then our golden age will begin. Or less offensively, more purely. Then we'll be in the golden age. Outside, if we think, well, maybe, this technological world will fall apart, what will we do? But actually, if you go to the spiritual world, even if you go to the heavenly planets, there's very little technology. In the spiritual world, there's no technology, especially in Goloka Vrindavan. There's absolutely no computers. There's no internet. There's not even an iPhone. There's no telephones. There's no buses. There's no cars. You can't even get a bicycle there. But people aren't hankering for those things, thinking, oh my God, we're so primitive. We're actually walking barefoot. Can't even get a good pair of shoes here. So primitive. But all there is love and happiness there forever. They don't care about all these other things. They just care about making each other happy. They don't have time for manufacturing things. So if we're afraid, modern civilization is falling apart. Well, because modern civilization has nothing else but technology. They have no relationships. They have no consciousness. Therefore, it's going to wind up to be zero. But if we actually have something, as Prabhupada said, if you light a match in a dark room, the darkness can't put the match out. So in this darkness of technology or whatever else they think they have, if we actually develop loving relationships and we have something to offer to people, then they'll see this whole attempt for material advancement was just a waste of time. They won't be disappointed or hankering for it again for some time. But that's what we have to manifest. Otherwise, we have nothing to offer people. If we can't live without our smartphone, that we're lost, then we have nothing really to offer people. Only if we develop the ability to actually deeply enter into the chanting of the holy names in association with the other devotees. Then we actually can have people join very easily, make some spiritual advancement, and realize that real happiness is in their relation with Krishna, not in a relationship with their body or the other external things. Anything else? Yes.
Hare Krishna. A question is connected with Balaram yesterday. And the question is regarding how can we understand relationship between Lord Balaram and Duryodhana? Why was Balaram so favorable to personification of Kali? It is one definition of the Duryodhana. Why was, and especially because Lord Balaram represents the Guru Tattva.
Yeah, I guess he was an illusion.
Lord Balaram?
Yeah. Now that we've analyzed it 5,000 years later, we can understand Balaram's a nice person, but even he's a subject to illusion. Why? Because it's part of pastimes. If there was no, first of all, Duryodhana was highly qualified in many ways, but he was also part of Krishna's pastimes. And you always have to have something to create antagonism. So what do they call it? Some friction or something. Otherwise, it's pretty boring. If the Pandavas would have come here, and they grew up in the royal household, and everyone loved them, and everything went well, and at the end they went back to Godhead, no one would ever read the book. It would be pretty boring. There has to be something that enters into it that creates some excitement, some friction. So Duryodhana was very favorable to Balaram, and Balaram is a super soul. He says, Samaham sarvabhuteshu name dveshtosti na priyaha. That I envy no one, nor am I partial to anyone. I'm equal to all. That whoever renders service unto me in devotion is a friend. I'm with him. So Duryodhana was very favorable towards Balaram. So Balaram had to reciprocate. How much, whether obviously he knew that this guy's a rascal, but he also knew that I got to train him up so eventually he can fight against Bhima and get smashed. Otherwise it wouldn't be a fight. The whole thing wouldn't have worked. unless Arjuna was put into illusion on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, there wouldn't be any Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavad Gita. Unless Parikshit Maharaj was put into illusion and Garla and Samika Muni, we wouldn't have the Bhagavatam. So these are all part of pastimes. As I said yesterday, unless in Krishna's pastimes many things go on, for Krishna it's all play. For us, it's good and bad from our point of view. It's all subjected to our evaluation, criticism. But for Krishna, it's all play. Therefore, for Krishna, whether it's the external energy or the internal energy, it's all acting under his direction for his effect. But when it comes to pastime, he needs something like Duryodhana or Hiranyakashipu or something. Otherwise, it would be quite boring and unrealistic.
It's really pastime.
Yeah, it's also Balaram's reciprocating with Duryodhana. What is he going to do? But Duryodhana surrenders to Balaram, Balaram kicks him away. Sorry, you're such a rascal. Whatever I said in Bhagavad Gita, it doesn't count. I just can't get out of my face. No, because Duryodhana appreciate they were worshippers of Balaram. What was he going to do? He reciprocates. You worship Krishna in any way to merge into him, or you want to fight against him, then Krishna reciprocates. So Duryodhana, Dhritarashtra, all of them, they knew Balaram to be the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and they worshipped him. They were envious of the Pandavas, and ultimately because of that, they were envious of Krishna, who supported them. But Balaram, they were quite favorable to us. Therefore, when Balaram came to ask for the Samba, please bring Samba with Lakshmana and surrender him. You unfairly, fought against him and defeated him with 6 Maharatis. And I'm a representative of King Ugrasena. If you don't do it, you're going to get into trouble. Because this is the order of King Ugrasena. And first they came though, they saw Balaram, and they worshipped him with Arga, and that was all the Kurus came, including Arjuna and Bhishma, but also Dhritarashtra and Duryodhana. They all worshipped him. But then when he started to talk in that way, that hand over Shamba and his wife, or else you're going to be in trouble, they all talked in a very negative way. So they worshipped him. It was rather superficial to one extent. Of course, later on we find out when Balaram got angry, he picked up his plow and was going to throw Hastinapur into the Ganges. They all said, well, actually, we just did this to see your power. So it's hard to figure it all out from our point of view, whether they're just all rascals or they actually did want to just see his power. In any case, they got a good, they had a good book of excuses. So it's achintya, it's inconceivable, but we can look at it from different points of view. All right, thank you very much. Karnatara Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Gaur Premanande.